Hi, my name is Kristina Lefever, and I'm president of Pollinator Project Rogue Valley. I have a presentation that I'd like to share with you today. Pollinator Project Rogue Valley is an all-volunteer nonprofit working in the Rogue Valley, and our inspiration is to envision a safe, healthy, and thriving pollinator habitat for every community. I wanted to talk to you today about why this is important, pollination and our pollinators, and what are their challenges and what can we do to help. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the Rogue Buzzway Project. So I always like to start off with a fun topic because I'm going to be talking to you today about plant sex. Really? That's true. Pollination is plant sex because almost anything on this planet has come about because two beings came together. And it's not any different with plants. However, we don't see them getting up and asking for that first dance, so we are depending on insects or wind to do the job. And so I'm going to talk to you about pollination through insects and other creatures. Here you have a little example of what the inside of a flower might look like schematically. If you can look at the screen, you see that there is a female part directly in the middle called the stigma. And then on the side are the male parts, if you will, and the anther is where the pollen is. And then if you can look at the picture here, the real life picture, this is beautiful fluffy pollen that is waiting to find the female part. And here is actually some grains of pollen that is waiting to go on down and fertilize the seed. That is pollination. And why do we care? Why do we need it? Well, pollination is vital to the life cycle of almost all flowering plants. And without that, we would not have food to eat, we would not have seeds, we would not have fruit, vegetables, many things that we all consume. And what I find fascinating is that over 120 million years, plants and pollinating insects and other creatures have been working together to co-evolve. In fact, 90% of all plant species need pollination from an animal or an insect to reproduce. Out of 200,000 different species worldwide that do provide pollination services, only 1,000 species are vertebrates, meaning birds and bats, even lemurs in South America. So that's 199,000 species that are invertebrates, insects like bees and flies, beetles, butterflies, moths, wasps, and many other beneficial insects. Why do we care? Because they feed us. 1 out of 3 bites, I think it's 2 bites of 3 bites, are from the pollination that these insects and birds and other creatures give us. Strawberries, apples, even coffee is pollinated by an insect. And this is true worldwide, even more than food. If you're wearing blue jeans today, then cotton is actually pollinated. If you had coffee this morning, then you are drinking a pollinated beverage. And then birds and wildlife, they are dependent on insects to survive. And also our native trees and shrubs are dependent on pollinators to reproduce. What happens if we have no pollinators? Well, unfortunately, that's actually happened. China has had in the past, some horrific pesticide policies, and they actually had areas of their country where there were no pollinators, and people were doing the pollination instead. Unfortunately, it's not just China. Last year, there was a study that came out from Germany, and some amateur scientists over 27 years had realized that insect biomass had dropped 76% over those 27 years there in Germany. And these were in preserves, which are fairly pristine places. And then to make matters worse, just recently, then there was a study that came out of Puerto Rico where a scientist had gone down after 40 years and realized that the insect biomass had dropped by about 80% in a pristine rainforest, as well as lizards and other creatures. And to make matters worse, just this January, there was a report that came out that reviewed 73 historical reports studying insect declines across the globe. And they told us that 40% of insect species are already facing extinction over the next few decades. And 41% of insect species have seen declines over the last 10 years. And of course, bees, butterflies, and moths have been hit the hardest, and something called dung beetles. If you don't know what a dung beetle is, look it up. They're fascinating creatures. So we are really needing to help our pollinators. So who are the pollinators? Well, most people know of the honeybee, and that is a very important pollinator, but there's so many more. And I always love to talk about the wild bees. Did you know that in Oregon alone, there are more than 500 species of native bees? These are different than the honeybees. They have different life cycles. They're not with us the entire 12 months of the year like we see the honeybee hive. And these are essential pollinators for our native plants, many of our food crops. They also provide, of course, food for birds and other wildlife. This is just a small graphic showing you a small amount of the 4,000 bees in North America. In addition to bees, we have flies and beetles and wasps, flower beetles, hoverflies, and then of course, hummingbirds, butterflies, and moths. All are doing great pollination services. So what are their challenges? What is making it difficult for them these days? Well, unfortunately, there's a lot. The biggest one on this list is development and loss of habitat. Think about where we live in the Rogue Valley and how we have more and more houses and more paving coming in. So it's up to us to really help get more habitat going. And pesticide use is a problem. Pesticide is a poison that can affect insects either directly or indirectly. And then there are some other things. Even climate change is making a big impact on pollinator populations, insect populations all around the globe. Here's a picture of loss of habitat. I think you can probably get the picture. If you don't have pollinator habitat, then you are not going to have pollinators. Even that front yard that's full of green grass, there's not anything there that a pollinator can eat. And please don't use pesticides. Pesticides are herbicides and insecticides, rodenticides, and more. Here are pictures of 2 herbicides, the Roundup and the Weed and Feed, and then 2 insecticides. And all 4 of these products will cause problems to our pollinators, either indirectly or directly. Perhaps this is not something that you've thought about, but there is Jackson County Vector Control that will spray mosquito spray. It's called Delta Guard. Deltamethrin is the product. And this is a product that will kill bees. It says it right on the label. And it also causes harm to humans. And you can actually get on Jackson County Vector Control's no spray list. And we encourage you to do that. There is the website address. What about roadsides? Have you seen a picture like this in Jackson County? Our Jackson County roads does use herbicides to kill grass. If you don't want to have that happen if you're in the county, you can actually sign up to with a no spray agreement, and there's a website there for you. So that has taken us through a lot of information. And the last great thing is, how can we help our pollinators? The easiest and best thing to do is to plant a pesticide-free garden, to have plants that are blooming all year long from early spring through late fall. And don't think that you have to have a perfect garden. I have a really messy garden, and I have lots of pollinators and lots of birds, and it's just wonderful to see when it's in bloom. If you have a small garden, think about planting diversity, so lots of different things. If you have a large space, go for it and put in large groupings so that you can really see the large swath of color, and so can the pollinators. So here's some great examples of pollinator gardens. These are filled with flowers, and the pollinators will love this. What kind of flowers, do you ask? Here are some of my favorite. California fuchsia, creeping thyme, dandelion, yep, dandelion. Alyssum, white sweet alyssum is a favorite of hoverflies, and they're great pollinators. Blue fescue, no, it's not blooming, but it does provide great habitat for lots of insects, beetles, and even maybe a chrysalis of a butterfly. And then everyone, please plant asters. If you can plant native asters, you are doing our pollinators the best favor, because they are great, long blooming in the fall, and the bees will need that before they start hibernating. Yes, chicory. And then this is ceanothus in the middle, which is one of my most favorite plants. A tree with lots of flowers is an easy place for the pollinators to take in lots of food, and also its habitat. Dandelions, and then there's some more grasses again, just to make you think about that as well. Please go native. Our native plants, trees, shrubs are excellent to provide sustenance to our pollinators. There's a wonderful book called Bringing Nature Home by Dr. Doug Tallamy, and he talks about how important native plants are for our pollinators. He did a study in his hometown back east, and he found that the beautiful ginkgo tree, as gorgeous as it is, compared to a native oak, actually supports one species of insects, compared to that native oak, which supported 532 species of insects. Can you imagine? That's just one tree. And he's done more studies, and he's actually shown that insect diversity decreases in gardens with more non-native plants. In addition to feeding them, you want to give them a home. So habitat, and really importantly, undisturbed shelter, which kind of means weeds, but we don't want to talk about that, is important for nesting and overwintering, and even bare soil. And I love to mulch, but bare soil is important because the native bees, 70% of native bees are ground nesters, and so they need to have access to that bare soil. So if you can leave your leaves in the fall, that's really important as well, because so many insects and butterflies have their chrysalises underneath there, and they need to overwinter so that you can have beautiful insects in the spring. And if you're working on cleaning up your garden, would you see an anise swallowtail pupa? I probably would not. So please think about leaving your garden as natural as you can and not cleaning up until early spring. One last thing is to provide moisture. Pollinators need some sort, either water for bees or mud for butterflies. And even the mason bee, which is one of my most favorite bees, it needs mud to make her home. That's what this picture is in the corner. She uses her mud to seal the cell walls as she lays her eggs. So we've talked about a lot today, and the last thing I'm going to leave you with is to tell you about our Rogue Buzzway project. And I hope everyone will think about this as they think about their pollinator garden. Where would you rather live? This house is before and after. I would like to live on the bottom one. So the pollinator corridor is very important for our pollinators. The Rogue Buzzway project is helping to connect the pollinators and the plants in our fragmented landscapes. They're able to find new floral resources and habitat, making sure that we don't end up with isolated species, especially in the time of climate change. So you can put your pollinator garden on the map and help us find out where these corridors are or where they're not. So questions? We have information on our resources on our Facebook page and our website. These are two longhorn bees. I hope you enjoy the picture as much as I do. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.